with the senators from Michigan all the time on that, on the ag issues, of course. Blocked bridges.
Sure. Oh boy.
Stuff gets out. We finally got the Canadians to clear up that bridge. So we have there's been a lot going on. I actually did a call with Debbie Stabenow with the Homeland Security head and a bunch of people Friday. And
yeah, that Black Bridge was a really big issue for us.
It's all of it had ripple effects, even though we do not do car manufacturing in Minnesota. We do parts and all kinds of things and so anyway, but please.
Yeah, all the car makers are actually, when I said us, I mean those of us that live in Michigan, but all the car makers are members of our association as well. So they participate in what we do. Mary Barra seems to go to see us virtually or in real life every January. Mm-hmm. We have our big event in Las Vegas every January.
Exactly. And anyway, everyone always confuses Michigan and Minnesota and Washington. So I'm constantly.
I'm from Michigan and I live in Minnesota, so I don't know how it happens, but everybody that I know in California always says, "Hey, how is Wisconsin?" And I say, "It's all flyover country to you guys." So we're all interconnected,
We're good, which really leads us to our subject, don't you guys think?
Yeah, we're all kind of connected by one supply chain, for sure.
We're all been screwed by shippers, so it's.
Well, you mentioned that, Senator Klobuchar. I was trying to figure out, and we did some research, why the shippers have this unique antitrust exemption. And it happened 100 years ago, and no one is quite sure why. It's there's only, 5 antitrust exemptions? Baseball's one, insurance, and a couple of
co-ops.
Yeah. It's just what is it about them?
Yeah. Well, I think we know. So, and now the problem is it's become more and more consolidated. So that's one of the solutions. And the other is what we're doing with the maritime. But why don't we, Rommel, I've kind of jumped in front of you here, our staff member, Rommel, there you are.
Hello, Senator.
And I think who else is on? Is Boz on as well? Hi, Boz. And Jody, thank you guys. Rommel's been working on this from the state office, and Boz has been working on it in Washington and actually worked on the bill with Senator Thune's staff because he's my staff member on the Commerce Committee and does a lot of this work. And then Jody's our Deputy State Director. So do you want to formally get started here, guys? And do you want me to say a few words and introduce our guests here?
Yep.
Is that right? Okay. So first of all, I want to thank everyone for being on, and I had fun watching the Super Bowl last night, as I'm sure all of you did. It could have been better with the Vikings, but such is life. And I very much have enjoyed the Olympics as well as we watch this hockey team. So there's a lot going on. The Miracle on Ice 2, which may be coming our way. So we've got a lot of Minnesotans, and it's been fun. And I learned a lot about sports that I didn't know existed over the last week. But meanwhile, there's another sport going on, like that pathetic segue, which is what's happening with shipping right now, and how basically we've been pushed to one end of the field and have a disadvantage that we want to fix. And I think one of the things you see happening with inflation and supply chain and how they're related with demand up and not enough supply, and it's not the only solution, but one of the major problems has been shipping and not getting goods to market, because if you don't have certain component parts, you can't make stuff. If our farmers can't, as you're about to hear, ship out their corn and there's delays, that hurts our economy. So there's really two things going on. One is increased cost to consumers, while the shippers have been making 2 to 3 to 4 times the amount. They're international conglomerates off the backs of Minnesota farmers, businesses, and consumers. And then the other thing going on is when we make stuff, which is what we want to happen, and export it, right? We want to make things, invent things, export to the world. That is arbitrarily slowed down, and some crates get shipped and some things get shipped and some don't. And so that's another thing that's happening. So I'm joined today by Tim Weibel, the chair of the Minnesota Corn Growers Association. Now, Tim, you are the relative of Carly, who used to work for me. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
And Carly's now over at the Pentagon, which is pretty cool and has a good job there. And next up is Todd Fegley, who is the founder and CEO of MedSource Labs. We thank you for being on, Todd. Gary Shapiro, who I was conversing with earlier, the president and CEO of the Consumer Technology Association, based out of Michigan, but is in an M state, so we accept him. Shannon Bornson, who's the vice chair of Minnesota District Export Council, who's seen on the front line what's happening with that second part of the problem I identified, and that is slowdowns on our exports out of the Midwest. We know that our farmers feed the world, our goods serve the world, and so many consumers look to us and our state for everything from soybeans to corn to dairy to poultry to semiconductors, which we make and we want to make more, to small manufacturing, to robotics, to medical devices. These things are so integral to the global supply chain. And to make things, we actually need component parts from around the world as well. But the big focus that I want to have today is on these prices and how these increased shipping costs that have really padded the pockets of international conglomerates have hurt Minnesota consumers. People don't want to go to a store wondering if the items on their shopping list are suddenly twice as expensive or stuck in transit. And the last thing anyone wants to hear is that their medical supplies are collecting dust at a port. Plus, consumers shouldn't have to bear the brunt of price hikes caused by inflated shipping costs. Now, as business leaders, the people on this call know that if you can't get your goods to market, you lose an enormous amount of money that you could be using to pay your employees and grow your business. What's the problem? Well, foreign, and it's not the only problem. We know there's workforce issues. I'm obsessed with that, with, pushing people into occupations as we should, where there are openings, with lifting up visa caps and helping with immigration reform that could be a game changer on this front. And we know the pandemic is still slowing things down around the world in terms of production and parts that we might need. But we should not turn our eyes to what's been going on with shipping. Foreign-owned ocean carriers have been making it more difficult and more expensive to ship products to where they need to go. And unreliable service has resulted in products being left at U.S. ports while ocean carriers are returning to Asia with empty containers. On top of that, the cost of shipping containers has quadrupled, with the burden falling hardest on businesses, consumers, and ag communities. Many U.S. exporters have also been slapped with unexpected and often illegitimate fees with no easy way to dispute the charges overseas. Let me put this in perspective. In the last 2 years, ag exporters lost at least 22% of foreign sales. But right now, carriers are posting record profits, bringing in 2 or 3 times the revenue that they predicted. So picture that. Our revenues, our ag exporters go down 22%, shippers go up 2 or 3 times. And I've heard about Minnesota companies that have only been able to ship about 60% of their orders because they can't access shipping containers. It's not acceptable, it's not sustainable, and we need to act. So we can't just hope that foreign suppliers and shippers that are based in other countries are going to do what's right for our country. We simply have to make it clear that they won't get their act together, and they won't get their act together until we give them a good reason to do so. And so that's why Senator John Thune and I introduced a bipartisan solution in the Senate, the Ocean Shipping Reform Act. Our bill protects American manufacturing and farming by making it harder for foreign-owned ocean carriers to refuse to ship ready-to-export goods waiting at our ports. It also limits these shippers' ability to impose added fees on container handling. This legislation will make a huge difference. I think it already does, because even before the Maritime Commission, which this bill would push them to do establishes a rulemaking. These shipping companies know we're on to them. They know what the profits were they posted. They know that on a bipartisan basis, John Thune is number 2 in the Senate on the Republican side, and myself, who's a major force when it comes to the Commerce Committee. The two of us have joined forces ourselves and have said, we're going to go after this. And sometimes that alone can change behavior because the shippers know what's coming down their way and that they need to get their act together because there's going to be a rulemaking in front of us. The chances for this bill are very good. A version of it has passed the House. The Senate version could be made part of the bill, which we refer to as the America Competes Act, which is the bill I just mentioned with the semiconductors and has a bunch of good manufacturing stuff in it. It started in the Senate as a bipartisan bill, and that's the bill that we're working to include our provision on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim and hear from all of our panelists. I want to thank you for being on.
Well, thank you, Senator, for opening it up to Minnesota Corn Growers Association today. Exports have always played a big part in agriculture. Currently, 17.5% of the corn produced in the U.S. is exported. Some of that probably has not been impacted quite as hard as some things because of the fact that we use total vessels for this, meaning they come in, they take one, just a shipment of corn, and it's bulk loaded, so we don't have to deal with the containers. But it does lead us to, we do have certain businesses that rely on these containers. We have specialty markets of beans and so on and so forth used for food grade in our foreign countries. And I was on the phone this morning with somebody that is dealing with this very same thing as far as the containers, where last week they had a shipment where they got a call early in the morning that they'd have one container available to load. They went to load it, got it back into the rail yard. It was an hour late getting into the rail yard. The railroad refused to take it, and meaning that they had to go back and unload that container, bring that container back empty. The gal that I spoke to said that they figured at least $1,000 loss that they were going to encompass as a company because of the fact that they couldn't get this in. And she said the short notice of container shipments is one thing that's really hindering them. The time frame, everything's just got a line as far as getting a truck to get up to a yard, St. Paul, to pick this container up, getting it down to the elevator to get it filled, getting it back up to the rail line in such a short window of time. And just, Minneapolis, St. Paul, the Twin Cities Metro is not a huge place where we get a lot of containers into. Chicago is. So there is that possibility of moving containers from Chicago up to Minneapolis, St. Paul to get it filled with these types of products that we know serve a lot of great folks up here in Minnesota and so on and so forth. They're so far behind on shipments. They still have 100,000 bushels of soybeans that need to be hauled out from 2020 production. So that doesn't even include the 21 production that we had this past year. So again, renting additional facility just to store that. Along with that, we in corn growers, we rely heavily on the red meat industry and the turkey and chicken industries. And a lot of the turkey and chicken gets exported out of Savannah, Georgia. Savannah, Georgia has not been immune to the types of things when it comes to container problems, whether bringing them in and having these container companies and shipping companies wanted to just run back with an empty container and not filling it up with a product that we can export. Mm-hmm. I do know on my farm that we talked about supply chain issues. We ordered a tractor. It was a year ago this month. Yeah. It's supposed to be here in March. And we got notified about a month ago that it's going to be June. And that's if everything goes right. And I know that I'm not the only farmer dealing with this. I know I'm not the only
person looking for an end table next to their daughter's bed.
Exactly. The list goes on and on and on.
The tractor is more important to the future of the world than my situation.
Well, they don't have my old tractor yet, so that's still in the shed. That's a good thing, But these types of things are things that should be very concerning. And another thing too is when we talk about crops or seeds, we get a lot of seed that is planted in the southern climates, South America, that we use in production up here. So it's harvested now, gets put on a container, gets shipped up here, and we plant it coming up in 6 weeks. And those supply chain things are certainly going to impact some of our seed when it comes to our seed coatings made lots of times overseas, if not the ingredients are, and getting that back stateside in a timely manner that we can use it for planting our 2022 crop is concerning to us. With that, I'll stop.
Okay. But I think the point you're making is it's all interconnected, and that,
Yep.
and that as we did put a focus on the ports and the congestion, the president did with that executive order in the short term, some improvements were made on the congestion. And then also we got that infrastructure bill, which is exciting. We just got 19 million for Duluth Port, which is of help to many of our manufacturers and farmers. But this is another issue. This is really a related but a separate issue, because this is what the shippers are doing to us. And they've been using the excuse of the ports. I think that excuse is coming to an end. And it certainly was eye-opening to see their movement while they were, crocodile tears. And so I think that's why we're pushing on this piece of it now. So.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. I think Todd is next. I had to pretend I'm going to do a software update tonight to get a software update notice off of your face, Todd.
Well, thanks.
I'll do it tonight. Go away. So now I can see you. It was blocking you permanently.
Okay. Well, I've been told I have a face for radio, so there we go. Thanks. So, Senator, thank you for giving us this time, and thank you for the bill that you've presented. We at MedSource Labs have been talking about this issue for what is now almost 2 years, and we have been letting everybody know how it's affecting our business and our industry. We at MedSource Labs make innovative devices, medical devices. We create them, we design them here, we manufacture them here.
Again?
I'm sorry?
Where are you located?
I'm sorry. Yeah, well, we're located here in the Twin Cities in Chaska, Minnesota. So,
Okay,
in Chanhassen now. So we're local. We manufacture, we design, we develop. We also import, and we also export. So we do basically everything that supply chain does in its essence. And so we've been affected in many different ways. Our innovation is a big piece of what we do. We've heard the call for the pandemic to create medical devices, PPE. We've done that. But we have been slowed down by the supply chain in many different ways. So, but to get to the point, I'll make a few points here, only 3 of them. So, but the first thing is that you've been talking about is the costs. We've seen costs rise exponentially. So I'll hit you with a few stats here. We've seen containers from the Far East go from a level of about $3,000 to $4,000 per import of a container to about $23,000 on average. And these are internal stats for here at MedSource Labs. So our products, whether they're finished or components that come in, the costs have gone up a lot. Additionally, we've seen our warehousing costs go up nearly 200% since this whole supply chain stymie has happened. And so those things together then with our manufacturing cost increase has made our exports increase exponentially as well. We have an internal stat of about 475% of increased cost to export product out of our facilities here. So really we see import costs coming in, we see warehousing costs go up, we see export costs going up. Across the board, it's a lot of costs that we see. Additionally, besides cost, we have availability. So availability of products, medical devices is very key during the pandemic. And actually when it's not during the pandemic, it's very key. It's an essential product. And we're seeing that containers that used to be a 30-day delivery time are now 90 to 120 days to get containers here. So in order to make the goods and to get the goods out, we're looking for components to get in here and they're delayed. It's very choppy, the supply chain. So we're seeing a lot of struggle. We're spending a lot of time and a resource getting these products here, which is difficult. So what that leads me to my third point is the impact of what it does to our business. So we design, develop innovative devices, but our innovation time is really narrowed. And that's a big key point, which I think a lot of people don't realize, is that we spend people capital, time capital, and hard capital getting products to market. And now we're not able to put those dollars into R&D, take those dollars to innovation is stymied. And we're about patient outcomes. And that means improving the healthcare And so if we're trying to improve a healthcare result, we need to have better devices. But in order to have better devices, you need to have people designing and developing and focusing on these devices. And because of a supply chain which is so slow, choppy, and with exponential costs going up, we're not able to do that as well. So basically, the pandemic is still going on. We're fighting it. We're doing our part. That's taking a lot of our time. But because of that, we're now having these incredibly high costs, and we're not able to get to market with new devices and innovative technologies. We really focus on simple upgrades for a simple procedure where it could have a better result for your mother or your father or your daughter, but we're not able to do that because of the costs that are going up and so much resources being spent other places.
Well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's important for people to realize it's not just like a one-off thing that happens one week and the prices go up. It has long-term impacts on consumers and business development.
Yeah, let me add one point to that as well. This has been going on for years now, and people don't realize that it's been almost 2 years that this is happening. And without this kind of a bill, the change that's necessary could be going on longer. And so we're a small to mid-sized firm. We're entrepreneurial, and we're doing what we're supposed to do, and that's get out there and be active. And because of what we're seeing, it can go on for a long time. So this and other things that we're going to do as a nation really need to address this supply chain issue because it affects everybody in so many ways.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, well, very good. I think next up is Gary. I will notice that Shannon and I remembered that it was Valentine's Day, and you guys
got it covered.
We're wearing red. Okay. All right, Gary, not to give you grief for that.
Oh, yeah, I got so excited when you said it was Valentine's Day. I'm like, oh, and then it's appropriate to introduce me that way. It's the fact that others are wearing red, not me. But thank you, Senator.
Hey, Gary, we're so
thank
happy you're joining us romantically from Michigan. So thank you.
I'm trying. Thank you, Senator, and thanks to your staff and you for focusing on an incredibly important industry. And I'm really thrilled to follow the two prior speakers. You know, Todd could be any one of my members. We represent the most innovative American companies. There's over 1,500. Several of them are headquartered in Minnesota. And our only focus and our big focus is innovation and how we can make the world better through our innovative products. And that's why we have the car companies. We have a lot of healthcare technology companies, entertainment companies, other companies doing all sorts of amazing things to make people's lives better. And for the first time in my many-year career with this industry, over 30 years, I actually have seen price increases, and it's shocking to me. It's not, and you know, I didn't even know how to deal with them, frankly. It's like the rest of the country dealing with inflation. And it's just what Todd said. It's because these companies are experiencing cost increases they've never felt. And it's also what you said, you have to wait. And the average American now is waiting for things. Whereas my father, my in-laws who escaped communist Poland said, they look at the shelves of their various stores they go into, and it reminds me of the times they had communist shopping at retailers. And that's what it was. It was the old empty store look. Things just aren't on the shelves anymore at stores, including food stores. And a lot of it has to do, obviously, with supply chain. So you're facing two things. Americans are experiencing frustrations and delays, and they're experiencing greater prices. And a lot of it could be directly tied to the industry you're focused on, which Americans don't think about. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but it could be one of the most important. And because one of the things we're seeing, these ocean carriers is a very concentrated industry, as you said when we were talking first. And you know, the profits they have is that's where our inflation is from in large part. I mean, $150 billion in pure profit in 2021, that's 6 times the profit they had in 2020. None of this, almost none.
They're major, they're almost all internationally
right.
based.
Only 2% are American ocean carriers. Only 2% are American flag. They have this, they're the least regulated industry in the history of industry in the United States. For some reason that no one can figure out, they have an antitrust immunity right up there with baseball. At least baseball we could understand. This one we don't. One German company, for example, Hapag AG, in 2021, 6 months of 2021, they had more profits than the prior 10 years they had combined. This is exorbitant. As I think you've said, it's inflationary, which I think is the #1 issue now for most Americans. It affects the supply chain, and your legislation is doing something substantive about it. And we appreciate it because I think, we're dealing with a very difficult economic situation ahead, and it's getting worse every month. And what Todd said about the stats in his industry about the cost of containers, well, it was $2,500 on average a container for my members in 2019. And now it goes up to around $25,000, a tenfold increase to ship that same container. So the prices, and 80% of our companies are small companies.
Gary,
People are calling us like the smaller companies with like tears, and you could hear it in their voices. They said, we can't afford to stay in business this way. We have to raise prices. That affects everything. We don't know if we'll sell as much. We don't know how to order. And of course, there's all the delivery times and things like that. So this is important legislation, and we thank you so much for pushing along. I think your strategies to get it through the Congress are good and strong, and it's about time the shipping industry got the scrutiny and regulation it needs.
and Gary, is that shipping from various places in the U.S. that you're talking about, the tenfold increase?
Well, we do export about $300 billion in consumer technology products, but we do import more. And that is coming from Asia to the United States, usually to the West Coast, with all the challenges there. But it is a little better on the East Coast if you're shipping there. In fact, my wife is doing some things, and she was talking to some others, and they were talking about how it's easier to get stuff from Europe now than it is to get it from Asia, frankly, in terms of delivery time. Could be 6 months from Asia, and the cost is higher. And Europe, which used to be the high cost place, is now the on-time place.
Yes. Luckily, there's some Minnesota businesses that have a lot of contacts in Europe and the Scandinavian. There's a lot of stuff that goes on between our country, our state, and theirs. But as you know, just like everywhere else, we do business all over the world. So that is the problem. And certainly our ag producers, as Tim would tell you, are going do a lot of work with Asia and getting them everything from beef to soybeans. Shannon, you're up next.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm glad I have the power color on too, Senator. Good choice. I'm Shannon Bornson. I'm the vice chair of the Minnesota District Export Council. So on behalf of the council, I want to thank you, Senator Klobuchar, and your distinguished co-sponsors for this Ocean Shipping Reform Act and supporting the export community at a time when the normal course of doing business is anything but normal right now. Exports are vital to Minnesota's economy, historically contributing more than $22 billion annually. And I think everyone on this call today can understand that exporters are always facing challenges and have been very creative in overcoming those challenges. And working with shipping lines is something I think that has been a frustration for some time, but really come to a head because of so many challenges coming together at the same time. You know, the number of issues that exporters are facing today is really quite unprecedented. First, the exporters facing these increased freight rates that have been discussed. I think what some people don't understand is, while the freight rate itself is really exorbitant, when you're thinking about some of these products that we're exporting from the state, the value of that container is almost at parity or maybe below in some cases, Gary, when you're talking about a shipping charge that's $20,000 to move a container. So exporters are having to choose to either pay these prices to continue their relationships with their customers, try to divert by air, maybe if they can, but not all products can be diverted by air, or they have to choose to not sell or ship. And, you know, none of those options are really great options for exporters. In addition, the shipping lines we touched on briefly, the way that they are levying their demurrage charges, detention charges, is something that I don't think we can call reasonable, correct? Right. Penalties are adding up to hundreds of thousands of dollars that are being charged against our exporters. And there's no way for the exporters to try and refute these charges. And I think that has been a really key pain point in this process.
And you know what the bill does, which is helpful on that front, is to shift the burden so that the shipping people will have to actually show that they are reasonable, because
exactly,
you guys have to prove it. And that it sounds so nerdy, but it really can make big difference. And also that they're required to certify any of the late fees. So.
Yeah, I heard reports, for example, that detention and demurrage charges were charged to an exporter because they didn't pick their container up at the port. The container was actually still on board the ship. So there's no way for them to pick it up, but they were being charged for that.
Deep sea equipment, So.
Yeah. So with no way to refute that charge, what do you do? And then finally, as you've heard with the backlog, there are a number of exporters that have just outright been denied their bookings because they're wanting to turn those empty containers around to Asia. And that impacts, in particular, the high bulk, low value exports. And agriculture, of course, tends to be one of those, unfortunately. And being a powerhouse in agriculture, that hurts. So the Minnesota District Export Council really applauds this bipartisan effort to relieve some of this burden. And again, importantly, it shifts the burden of proof onto the shipping lines instead of our exporters, especially for these detention and demurrage charges. And having to follow federal guidelines as to what is truly reasonable will be a big help. So it's something shippers, I think, have wanted for a long time. So thank you very much, Senator, for leading this effort and for always being a champion for exporters. We appreciate it.
I'm remembering back to the downturn back in 2008 and how we really ramped up exporting. And one of my favorite things we did in Minnesota is we made it such a big deal, electeds, you guys, and the businesses, as a way out of this. If we could open up more export markets and make it easier for us to export, that the export people in Washington with the Commerce Department reported that there were so many requests from Minnesota that they added staff members to the Minnesota office, which I love so much. And we've always had this a big part of our strategy in our state. I think you all know that. Part of it is that we have so many successful exporting big companies, and they spawn small companies or they work with small companies. And it's really worked out well, the synergy. And so you have small and medium-sized companies that are exporting that in other states might not export. So thank you for that. I wanted to mention the other authors. We worked, Senator Thune and I worked really hard to make sure we had a sort of a group that reflected the country in terms of where they came from. We've got Baldwin of Wisconsin, Hoven of our neighboring state of North Dakota, Stabenow of Michigan, Senator Marshall, Kansas, Peters of Michigan, Moran of Kansas, Blumenthal of Connecticut, Young of Indiana, Kelly of Arizona, Blackburn of Tennessee, Booker of New Jersey, Ernst of Iowa, Smith, of course, of Minnesota, and Senator Crapo of Idaho. So we've done a pretty good job spanning the country. And I'm very proud of myself that I knew where all my senators were from, because it wasn't on this piece of paper. So I guess I have one question to ask, maybe one or two, and that is, do you have the power, and anyone can take this, with these foreign shipping companies to say, hey, you're not delivering this stuff on time, but I know you delivered this on time for whatever, some other company, or these rates are too high, bring them down. Have you tried, have your members, if you're of an association, tried to do that? And I see that Todd is nodding his head. So I had a call with business leaders this morning in Minnesota, and I brought up that, I'm hoping people go back to work soon. And I noticed that the Caribou CEO was raised. Because of course he wants people to go back, they'll go to the coffee shop. But anyway, I noticed you nodded your head, Todd. So take it away.
I would love to jump in. We have been working with carriers for a long time, and it's really, relationships mean a lot, but they only mean so much. But at the end of the day, we're pretty powerless. Think about it. We're spending 6 to 7 times more per container. People say these stats and they spit them out, but you're looking at $20,000 per container additional that you're trying to import for your process. We import and export over 300 containers a year. Do the math, that's over $6 million of additional costs. And we've worked with them. We're paying 6 to 7 times more, but we're also getting 1 1/20th or 1/50th the service or whatever, however you want to quantify it. So we're powerless. So what you're doing is so awesome. And I'm saying this, that we're really excited. This really means a lot. It means a lot to us and individuals. It's groundbreaking. So, but to answer the question, we try, we work with people, we do our best, but it's really very difficult. There's no recourse. The demurrage charges you talked about, it's real. We get bills, they stack up, and you're looking at 10, 20, 50, 80, $100,000 additional that just rack up because the goods are sitting there. It's not any fault to us or even the people that are moving our product, but the bills come this way. We've got to pay them if we want to stay in the game. So long and short is we can't do much other than keep trying, but this is putting some teeth in the process.
Very good. Does anyone else want to answer that? Okay. Have you had experiences of products that you know are ready to ship? Maybe this is have your members, in your case, Shannon, Gary, have products that they're ready to ship and then they can't, and there's delays and they get really messed up. I think we've had a few examples come on that front, but anyone else want to chime in? No?
Yeah, Senator. Oh, sorry, Gary.
Go ahead, sir.
Just a lot of anecdotal things, Senator, about how they're trying to make bookings and for whatever reason kind of get a runaround in between either their rep with the carry line and the freight forwarder, information isn't correct and it ends up being that there's a container not there for them. Lots of anecdotal instances of things like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very good. And how about you? Want to add anything, Gary?
Sure. No, I would totally agree. I mean, it's a mailbox moment for companies. They have their products ready, they're ready to go, and they can't do anything. And they promised their customers something, and they can't fulfill their commitments to their customers, and it's just gut wrenching for them. And it's the two things: it's the charges and the delays. And the charges are what this is aimed at in part, because the charges are just unfair, and it's just purely taking advantage of COVID and the situation and the fact that they are not regulated. And that's what this covers. In terms of delays,
for everyone else on the call, it's such a highly concentrated, as you're pointing out, with antitrust. They have this immunity, which is, by the way, a separate bill I did, but they have all this consolidation. They're monopolies. They can charge what they want. They can delay what they want. It's not like you can say, oh, I'm going to go down to one of your smaller competitors who's hungry for my business.
Well, it's the antitrust combined with the lack of regulatory oversight. So there's two things they have, so they could do whatever they want and charge extraordinary amounts of money. And the delay issue is something, admittedly, some of that, the delay is out of their control. If we can't get stuff off a boat, so there's not enough skilled workers, we're not automated enough, that's clearly on us as a country. We have to change policies. And I know the administration's worked on that and you've worked on that. But how they deal with it and how they charge for it is also, that's in their control as well. And so it's the worst situation I've seen in commerce in the country in my career, because we have an efficient distribution system. I mean, Amazon proves that every day. I mean, we've never been so great or getting, food delivered to your door and during the Super Bowl as I did last night. It's just like, it's amazing. But on the other hand, we're becoming a second or third world country in terms of products that the consumers want getting delivered. And that's a frustration you hear all across the country. I'm sure you've heard it. You've had it. You've said it with your own
I know with my own
furniture
delivery, certain things just are, or if I go into the grocery stores at home or here, I tend to do more delivery. And so I see it on both ends, right? The stuff that used to automatically come is just not there anymore, right? And it's sort of, it's unpredictable what thing you're not going to get. So.
And almost all of this is traced to the import-export portion of what we're doing as a country now, and we could fix it, and that's why I'm glad that you're doing something about it. It's very positive.
All right, well, thank you. Last up, if you want to have the closing word here, Tim, because I have to go on a briefing on Ukraine, as if we don't have enough things going on right now. So with the State Department. So do you want to close up here, Tim? Tim? Oops, you're muted. Happens to every senator.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for the work you're doing on this. And and make sure you tell the rest of the folks involved in this bill that we truly appreciate it. The one thing with agriculture is, we talk about time sensitivity. We are truly a time sensitive business when it comes to agriculture, whether it be fresh meat export or getting these crop protection things in so we can use them this spring out in the field. I can't reiterate that enough, that it's so important that we get a fix to this problem. And I think everybody's looking forward to, if there is such a thing as normalcy, getting back to it.
Very good. All right, excellent. Well, this was really, really good. And I want to thank, I mentioned our staff members on there, Rommel and Boz, but I also wanted to mention that, and Jody, but I know Jake was on. I think he's not on anymore, Jody, but he
That's
does.
right. Jake had to pop.
Yeah, he does our work up in the northwestern Minnesota, where a lot of the businesses are located, as well as, of course, many, many other places. As well as thank you to Jane, who's here with me, and Rebecca for their work. So thank you. And Brian Werner, you're there somewhere. There's Brian.
I'm here. Hello. Hi.
Washington with me, who does our ag work and our rural work and has done incredible stuff. He's from the Marshall area. So, all right. Actually, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
All right. Bye, everybody.